we're back. Thanks for staying with us. You're listening to Planet Green Trees. Call in number 1-347-326-9626, episode 216. We're calling a local, state, federal menagerie. And without further ado, we're going to have, returning to Planet Green Trees and secretly a fan of the show, Mike Liszewski. Welcome back, Mike. How are you?
Great. Thanks for having me back on the show.
Glad to have you. It's an exciting topic that you talk about. At least, when you get to use public media to make fun of some of the silly rules that we have in this country. You have been involved with, and I don't know to what extent, I'm curious to hear, some of the advertisements that they're using now to try to change the policy in the NFL about marijuana use. Will you explain to our listeners what that's all about?
We had an opportunity to get some ads in USA Today's football preview issues in, I believe, 9 different markets. I believe it was in Atlanta, Chicago, Dallas, Denver, Green Bay. We were also in Miami, New York, Philly. I think New England may have been the other one. So we weren't able to get them in all the markets, but we had this opportunity to get a message in this national publication and deliver it to an audience that might not necessarily be familiar with medical cannabis. So this actually wasn't so much going for changing the NFL policy, but we were trying to engage with the ads, really trying to engage NFL fans who might not necessarily view cannabis as a medical option. So that was sort of why the ad approached in a really broad way. Like, said 100 million Americans live with chronic pain, and that 9 out of 10 NFL players are currently experiencing, former players are currently experiencing pain, and trying to make it, that sort of connection to help bring it down to the fans level, especially for fans who may not already have a family member or themselves have a condition for which medical cannabis has worked. And so we were trying to increase the number of folks in football markets who are aware of how you can use medical cannabis to treat these conditions. And then the ad led to a education page on our website where we discussed a couple different areas where football and cannabis are related, and discussing how cannabis can reduce the need for opioid medication. And even after the ad came out, we had a even better study came out that confirmed what we have been thinking all along would be the case, and that's that cannabis really interacts pretty great with opioid medication, and that it allows patients who need opioids for chronic pain, and a lot of those are football players, to use relatively low amounts and to not increase their dosage.
I was going to say, Jamie wants to ask you a question in a second, but I want to address that exact thing that you're talking about, because we had on one of the contributors to that study, and we learned a number of fascinating things. And the way you just explained is the way that I read it the exact same way, in that obviously those states that have medical marijuana are doing better, and 25% fewer people are dying from opiate overdose. It must be because they're using medical marijuana instead of opiates. That's how I think amongst the people within the medical cannabis community and the reform movement, I think it's an understood. It's like almost like a truth, And but what you said was kind of interesting. And first of all, it was a federally funded study, which was fascinating to me that they were going in this direction. And she said that it wasn't so much that people were using cannabis instead of pills. The reason people are dying is because when they're taking pills, they're using other drugs as well, alcohol or other pills or harder drugs. And really what the study, I think, showed at the end of the day, what she interpreted as meaning, because I was like, well, clearly it means that medical marijuana is saving them. She said that in these states it is a healthier choice if you're going to be partying, like something to that effect. Like they can't wind it down to the specifics for medical only, but the people that are dying is because they're abusing them, and fewer people are dying from abuse when they use cannabis because it doesn't, have that same, the negative interaction with the opiates that people are on. What do you think about that?
Yeah, that's my understanding as well. And there's also it may not have been in that most recent study, but there's a similar study, and I wish I could I had it in front of me. And on ACE's website, we do have the data bank of all the medical literature that's been compiled in case studies and journal studies, and this is where I'm citing it from. That there's evidence that opioid users who need opioids, because some people do. These medications, they do have a purpose. They do serve a function. They have high risk and side effects that probably aren't good for everyone. But for those who do need opioids, typically you need to increase your dosage to get the same effect, and you need to do this over time. So the body builds a pretty strong tolerance, and so you're taking it's not difficult for a patient, even abiding by the instructions on the medication, to build up a pretty strong tolerance to these medications. But if what they're finding is if someone's using cannabis as an adjunct to their opioid for pain relief, typically they don't have to increase the dosage. So someone who needs an opioid can use a relatively low amount for a long period of time without increasing the dosage and still gets that pain relief. And that is another way that will help decrease overdose deaths, because the overdoses tend to come when people are developing these substantial tolerances, and they're taking the tolerance to what the body feels, the intoxicating effect or the pain relief, one or the other or both. But as you increase that dose just to start to get that effect, it still has the negative toxic effects. And so that's what cannabis can help prevent, in addition to what you just said.
We've known for a long time there's been anecdotal evidence. It's Rick Thompson, by the way, Mike. There's been anecdotal evidence all over the place that opioid use is reduced by cannabis, and now seeing some hard science to back that up. Perhaps we'll have greater acceptance of some of those other anecdotal evidence that we've seen in the medical profession.
Well, I just had surgery almost a week ago, and I used the opiates for the first couple of days, and have not since, because of my ability to use cannabis in their place. And Mike, I wanted to bring up one of the memes or one of the ads, and in some ways it is kind of geared toward the NFL a little bit. I know most of them you said were for the fans, but this one has a lot of stats concerning traumatic brain injury, and then it ends with the quote, "Prohibiting a player from using medical marijuana is the same as prohibiting a player from using a helmet."
Great line. Good job. Wow.
I wish I could take credit for that one. I believe that was our social media specialist, Talana Latimer, here at the conference. She was doing a lot of the work there at the conference as well. She's been putting together a lot of these memes. We've been she and I and Hunter Holloman and Steph. We've all really been working as a group to generate these. And yeah, some of these, this whole broader campaign is also in part to get the NFL to change their policy. When I was saying aimed more directly at fans, I was speaking more specifically about the ads in USA Today. But you're right. There is this. We have been really since December. Steph had a opinion piece in Huffington Post, and I believe in there asking for the NFL to change their policy to mimic the change that the Olympics changed, where it went from 15 nanograms per milliliter to 150 nanograms per milliliter. And in fact, that is where the NFL Players Association is likely to be voting on tomorrow. They would be voting on it today if they didn't have Thursday night football now, but two of the teams are playing tonight, so they postpone the vote till tomorrow. But it seems like they're going to ratify it. And as far as where this has been, the stories about the new drug policy being ratified by the Players Union, the marijuana story has actually been a smaller part of it. It's been hung up mostly because of disagreements on HGH blood testing. But everyone is pretty happy with the change in the marijuana policy. And in addition to upping it from 15 to 150, which would really decrease the number of people who test positive. They also are going to change the way that you are treated by the league if you do have a positive test. So if you have your first positive test in the NFL right now for marijuana, you're in the league's drug program for the rest of your career. You're subject to more frequent drug testing and greater penalties for subsequent offenses. But the option that what will now happen for players if they have a first test for marijuana, if they go a year without a second test, and again, we're talking there'd be a tenfold increase in the level a player could have in their system. So we're talking even a lot fewer positive tests anyway that could possibly happen. So it would be a lot easier for a player to reach this full year without having another negative or positive test, and then they're out of the program. So then if they did happen to test positive again after another full year, it would be treated like a first offense, and the players wouldn't be subject to as many penalties. So they're really moving in the right direction, and players probably
was too small. They recognized that 15 nanograms was too low of a number.
Oh yeah,
we're dealing
anyone
with
who's using in a medical context is going to test positive for 15 nanograms per milliliter, pretty much all the time.
Upon waking, right?
And we're dealing with people making like 5 nanograms, the limit for driving. What kind of stuff is that based on? That makes any sense?
Because there's no science.
Well, it's based on U.S.
Well, and these are two different types because it's the NFL uses the urinalysis, which that's the 15 threshold is the typical low threshold on that. But to test have a positive test at 150 nanograms on a urinalysis, I believe you have to be consuming almost within that same day, even if you are a regular user. That's how I understand. I'm not fully an expert on that, but with the blood testing, you're absolutely right. The 5 nanogram per milliliter on the blood testing in terms of measuring intoxication, there's no real science behind it, and what's worse is that we've seen in the limited data that's available is people's blood THC concentration can actually go up in a regular user. If they abstain for a couple of days, they might have a day or two where they have a decrease in their level, and then on day 3 or day 4, it may start to spike up again. It's a really weird phenomenon. It's a pretty lousy means of coming to a per se conviction for someone when there's no real science to back it up.
That's so true.
And you were still talking, but I'm sorry. Go ahead, Rick.
No, I was just going to say congratulations to Steph and the entire ASA team for that wonderful story that was placed on CNN. A nice blog that she wrote. Fantastic work again from the national office.
We appreciate the kind words. That's always nice to hear.
Listen, hi, this is Jeff. I got a quick question. I was just looking at something the other day, and it seems that the U.S. Department of Health and Human Services has this patent on cannabinoids for application to neurological damage following ischemic results such as trauma. Wouldn't that make kind of Department of Health and Human Services a natural ally of the NBA?
Or the NFL?
The NFL or any sports organization.
Right.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, the thing with with Health and Human Services is we've seen definitely a change in attitude from some of the folks we've been talking with there. There's definitely more of a desire to do positive things with cannabis research, but there's still the Public Health Service review process, which really inhibits research, and that's the protocol that was put in place after the Institute of Medicine study in the late 90s, and that protocol is still in place. And that's Rick Doblin and MAPS. They have been really the ones who have been most tenaciously working to get that removed, and we've been assisting their efforts with that. But we have been seeing some better at least messaging coming out of Health and Human Services in the scant interactions we have with them. And in a general sense, I think you're right. It would seem that that they have this patent that they would want to work closer with sports leagues that have regularly have traumatic brain injury type stuff.
Well, it's a legal right. They should either exploit or hand it over, right?
Yeah, you would hope, but logic sometimes goes out the window when it comes to the federal government and cannabis, as we've unfortunately seen throughout our lifetimes.
Yeah, we're seeing all kinds of levels of government that maybe have lost their mind when it comes to cannabis law reform. Here in Michigan, of course, we have a robust program of medical, but we also have a network of cities that are going to vote on legalization this year. We'll be talking a little bit later in the show about some of those efforts and some of the difficulties they're running into because of obstructionist local officials, some of which aren't elected, they're appointed. And that'll be discussed a little bit later. I know you probably won't be on the line, Mike, but you're familiar with those kind of local difficulties through your career, I'm sure.
Oh yeah. The particularly in California, local governments have been sometimes you get some great local governments, and I think we've seen that in Michigan as well. Ann Arbor and some other some towns have done some really great, sensible things to trying to make safe access work in Michigan. But then you have other local government officials who are doing everything in their power to impede safe access and think that the most restrictive medical marijuana law is the best medical marijuana law when the standard of the number of patients who are helped and to the degree that they are helped really ought to be that standard. But the frustration is felt at all levels of government, for certain.
We can certainly relate here in Michigan, and of course, Michigan and California are very similar in the fact that it is more of a local effect situation.
Mike, there was a kind of a local option medical marijuana distribution bill that was going on in California not too long ago. What's the status on that?
That bill ended up getting defeated. Or I'm not sure if they actually had a vote on it in the Assembly. I think it actually didn't come to a vote. The Senate passed it, and we had been working with the bill sponsors, one of whom, the Senate sponsor, year to now had never really been, even remotely considered a champion of medical cannabis, and really, the law was sort of, it was a proposal that came from the League of Cities, which actually had been the group that had been most opposed to medical a state controlled medical marijuana dispensary program, them and the Police Chiefs Association. But the both of those groups, they put together what initially was a pretty decent proposal. There obviously were things we wanted to do different, and there was some good progress with it. But at the end of the day, there were changes to it that we didn't like, and it was good that it didn't come to a vote in the Assembly, because the final version that would have gone to the floor wouldn't have been good for patients. But we think California is going to be in a good position in 2015 to get something passed for medical.
That's great. Of course, legalization will be up for a vote in Oregon and Alaska and Washington, D.C. this year. So on a national basis, we're seeing a rapid advancement of laws in all of these individual crucibles of democracy.
And I think many are learning from Washington that they need to do what they can do to protect the medical programs in those states as the inevitable legalization comes in.
And, of course, we're always fighting to make sure that home cultivation is still preserved for patients, and that the individual rights of the patient are respected regardless of which state they're in or what individual scheme they've determined. So, Mike, I know we're running pretty short on time here. I appreciate you coming on. That's been a wonderful conversation. Was there any final thing you'd like to wrap up? Any plug for ASA you'd like to give us before we let you go?
Well, I know you guys like to hear what's going on federally. Just a quick update. Right now it's looking like the CJS amendment, which is the Rohrabacher-Farr amendment that passed in the House back in May. It's probably not going to come to a Senate vote until after the election in November, which is a good thing ultimately for medical cannabis. It's sort of a bad thing when talking about the grand scheme of government and funding it, that we're going to have to do a short-term continuing resolution. But for medical cannabis activists, it's actually going to be a really good thing, because that's going to free up some of the like senators in, say, Arkansas or Louisiana, where they're in a race where they don't want to have to cast a controversial vote on marijuana before the election. They'll be more inclined to vote their conscience and to vote for it after the election. So I think we're going to see a vote on that in November. That's not a sure thing. Things could change, and the Senate could end up voting on it in September sometime, but we're pretty sure it's going to happen in sometime in November or December. And that's the main thing going on federally right now. And then Steph would really, really appreciate it if I plug our conference. Our national conference for 2015 is going to be, again, in Washington, D.C., and we're going to have a lobby day with it. It's going to be March 27th through the 21st. Our lobby day, we're going to be doing it on a Tuesday this year instead of a Monday, and that's because typically you're more likely to get meetings with the actual members of Congress if you have your lobby day on a Tuesday, Wednesday, or Thursday, because they do a lot of their traveling on Mondays and Fridays to and from their districts. So we try to push back an extra day this year into Tuesday, and that way we're hoping to get some better meetings that way.
Excellent. It sounds fantastic. And, of course, all the information on those conferences and everything else you discussed is on the ASA website, which is safeaccessnow.org. And, of course, that website is just chock full of activist tools, automatic letter generators to your senator, sample letters to handwrite. There are just a thousand things you can find on that Americans for Safe Access website. So all of our listeners are encouraged to check that out, not only for the information about the conferences that Mike mentioned. And again, Mike, thanks so much for coming on the program this evening, and we really appreciate your time. I know that you've got a big job, and sometimes shaving off a couple of minutes to do some media is a pleasure. So thanks so much for coming on the program.
Yeah, thanks for having me back on, and I appreciate all the work you guys are doing up in Michigan. Keep up the great work.
Thank you.
Thanks again.
Have a great night.
All right. Bye-bye.
Bye. All right, so we got about 1 hour and 41 seconds left, and we would normally take a break right now, but we're a little behind schedule. I know we are scheduled to have John Targowski on. What time, Jamie?
9:15, I think.
Okay. I just told him back up in 5 minutes. David Rudoy is going to try to sneak his way back in. I understand he may be, he was here, and he had other two important things he had to do. He had to leave. Now he wants to try to call back in. We're going to have to take a vote about that. I think we'll let out. But in the meantime, without further ado, I do believe, even though the number may be a little bit different than anticipated, we should have, is this the one and only godfather of marijuana in Michigan? Tim Beck.
Tim, is that you live? I would say that's not Tim.
No. Hello?
Hey, Tim has got a different
Kinda
voice.
sounds like it.
Nice. That's good. Hi, introduce yourself. You're live on the radio. Who are you?
Hi, my name is CJ, and I've been listening to you guys' content. I am suffering from nausea, and I wanted to ask a couple of questions in regards to the law and the medical marijuana card. Does the law respect the medical marijuana card? And how does the legalization affect us as patients with that card?
Well, of course, marijuana legalization is not going to give you any kind of protections in your workplace. And in employment situations, having a medical marijuana card is never going to be an out-of-style type thing. If you have nausea, however, nausea is definitely something that marijuana can help you with. And there are tons of certification centers around. Mr. Camoran, we have a recommendation for a certification center, don't we? The green light, I believe.
You're going to get me talking about the bona fide doctor-patient relationship.
No, we just want a recommendation of a certification center for our caller.
We like Dr. Kumar Singh very much.
Right.
He's participated in the Gold Standard Certification Program, which involves follow-up care and determining medical efficacy of the patient's use of cannabis. And, you know, as you go in, there's a lot of misinformation out there. You want to make sure you have a doctor that's going to follow up with you, and you're going to go back and see him or her. And maintain a relationship so that they can understand, you know, how the cannabis is affecting your condition. And I would say this, especially nausea is like the oldest of all the conditions. I mean, I think, you know, from the very get-go, the first recognized treatment of cannabis was the nausea caused by chemotherapy, and even long before medical marijuana,
the nausea caused by marriage,
menstruation, right? Or I was going to say lawyering, but anyways, how was that? Does that answer the question at all?
CJ,
it does. What was the doctor's name again?
Dr. Kumar Singh. We got a number from.
And the idea is to get somebody, a doctor who understands the law and will come to your aid if you need it. And Dr. Singh has demonstrated that he will do that. There are others who might be somebody closer to you, but make sure you understand the importance of having the right kind of doctor. And when we were talking to Mike before, you asked about how legalization would affect the patients. I'm not sure what exactly what you meant, and we saw in Washington State where things did not get implemented in a way where the medical program was protected. Counties were allowed to bar all activity, including medical and recreational or personal use. In Colorado, they used the medical marijuana dispensaries as the infrastructure basis for the personal use distribution as well, and kept the medical program and created a situation where it was kind of a dual program. So if you're still a patient, you don't pay the extra taxes. You have access to more of the medicine as you need it, probably some specific products that are geared toward conditions and things like that. And we're going to look out to make sure that is in place in Michigan as well as the inevitable legalization comes in.
And as far as Dr. Singh, his last name is Singh, but you can reach him at calling 855-DOC-CERT, 855-DOC-CERT. That's the phone number for the Green Light Clinic. CJ, thanks so much for calling in. We appreciate your patronage as a listener, and thanks again for your participation in tonight's program.
Thank you.
Thank you very much, CJ. That would be evidence of. Thank you. That would be evidence of the need that we have for a call screener, right? Because that
was a great call.
No, I know, but no. What I meant is that it wasn't Tim Beck. But
right, I understand. Yeah.
This.
Although I thought for a second there when she started talking.
I'm trying to say
this is Tim Beck.
This is
Tim Beck,
real
the
man.
one of the godfather of marijuana, Michigan. Tim, welcome to the show. Welcome back. And what's going on?
Well, I'm glad to be here again. Good show as usual. I'll cut right to the chase. This is breaking news. Okay, it's never been in electronic format. It's on this show like right now. Okay, we haven't had ambitious goals. We wanted to have 16 ballot initiatives, in the state of Michigan hitting, in this election cycle. Again, that's an ambitious goal, and some of these have fallen by the wayside due to, technical problems, human frailty, legal. Yeah. But here's the exact count right now. Okay, Berkeley, Huntington Woods, Pleasant Ridge, Saginaw, Mount Pleasant, Port Huron, Lapeer, Clare, Harrison, Onaway, and Frankfort, to the best of our knowledge and belief, have all been certified for the ballot. They will be voted on by the people in those cities in November.
So we've already gone.
Well, we still got a couple more that you didn't mention. Talk to us about those, Tim.
Yeah, we will. I mean, again, the other two that were also on the list, that is, they've been consummated. That is Oak Park and Hazel Park. That was part of the list. We won, on those. But that said, there are question marks on. We had East Lansing, Montrose, Utica, Keego Harbor, and Grosse Pointe Park were also target cities. Grosse Pointe Park, is over due to mistakes. Mistakes were made, but we're going to be there, next year. There are question marks right now. Utica, it appears to be out. The problem is we had an attorney, a very, very good man. I'm not going to mention his name on the show or anything like that. There's no value in that, whatsoever.
Right.
It turns out, I'm sorry?
I said we wouldn't ask you to reveal his name either, Tim.
Oh, thank you. No problem. This attorney is a very, very good person, and weirdly enough, the language that we used in Utica was the exact language that was used in Ypsilanti in 2012. The Ypsilanti city clerk and authority figures did not discover this typographical error. It went on the ballot and it passed with 74% of the vote. In Utica, which is in Macomb County, and I maintain that Macomb County is a hotbed to some degree of anti-cannabis personalities. It's like another Oakland County, almost not exactly as bad, but almost. And they fly-spec'd this thing, and it turned out there was a citation, was wrong with respect to the Michigan Home Rule Cities Act. And some experts consider that to be a fatal flaw. And this attorney he's very chagrined. He feels terrible about it. We all feel terrible about it. The fact it was simply a typographical error, there is a possibility that this can be rectified in a court of law. And this attorney is working pro bono to try to turn that, around. And it may be possible. However, it's highly unlikely that Utica, unless there's this Hail Mary pass works, that Utica will be on the ballot, in November. Again, Utica threw all kinds of, shinola against the wall. Most of it was bogus, but the fact that a wrong, section of the code was cited could be a fatal error. And we're not prepared to. We love Mark Brewer. Mark Brewer is one of the greatest. He's one of the greatest personalities that we know. But he don't work for free. And God love him, $300 an hour, and he took on Oak Park. Okay, and we won because that was really important. And again, bottom line, there is a possible Hail Mary pass that we could be, make it in Utica. Montrose, that's a horse of a different color. And again, the county prosecutor, the county clerk, according to secondhand sources, and Rick Thompson, you can correct me here, and please disabuse me of any misinformation, but from what I understand, the Genesee County clerk is almost welcoming a lawsuit because for political cover. Apparently the Montrose City Council was 2 days late. Yeah, we got all the right signatures, we did everything, and we were 2 days late. And he says, "No, we're not putting on the ballot. Sue me," kind of thing. I'm trying to be as objective as possible. That's what we're facing. It could be. Yes, sir. I'm sorry.
I want to just ask you, I know we've got Eric on the phone, and I think he may have been present.
Eric, right on.
But
Eric,
I want to ask
please.
Tim, I do want to ask you this, Tim. I'm not going to, I know, if you can articulate or explain maybe for those listeners that have been involved in it, or, who may be collecting signatures now, or want to in the future. Mm-hmm. What is the thing that happened? Is it easy to articulate? I know it's a type is just
in Montrose specifically, or Utica.
Start with Utica.
In Utica, it was just simply a citation of reference to the wrong section of law. Right. That's really all it was. Right. It explained what the penalties in law were to anyone that signed the petition, and just used an incorrect number of Michigan law citation. So that's all it was in Utica. And I think, Tim, you're much better to address the issue in Grosse Pointe Park than I am.
Well, no, again, it's just we are still the cannabis reform community are a hated minority. I truly believe that within the political class, for the most part, we still have to prove that we're legitimate. That's bullshit, but I'm sorry. Go on.
You're right.
The reason it didn't get caught in Ypsilanti is because they didn't care. They had no intention.
That's right.
They don't care.
I agree. They didn't fly spec it. They didn't get out a microscope. Period. They didn't really care. And in the sense that, and their explanation when we won with 74% in Ypsilanti says, well, that's great. I mean, we're just, this vote only reaffirms our policy in Ypsilanti because we're not arresting anybody for simple possession of, marijuana. Unless they've obviously maybe committed some other bizarre crime or a noted felon, whatever. That was their explanation. They didn't care. Utica, that's a different ballgame. This is in Macomb County. They don't like it at all.
For those of our listeners that may not be familiar with what we're referring to, Ypsilanti has the state's longest-running policy for medical marijuana dispensaries. Jamie Lowell, to my left, our producer and on-air that you've heard several times this evening, runs the very first medical marijuana dispensary in the state of Michigan. And I know that Michael was trying to get in on a point here too, Mike.
Why don't we have Eric on? I want to hear what he recalls from it. But, Tim, just to your point before we go to Eric, there has been a lot of, like Ypsilanti is one that there was no issue, but there have been a couple of, cities, despite the popular vote, that have just said, screw it, take us to court.
Yeah.
And, that is the attitude. I mean, we identify them. They're the naysayers. They're drinking the Kool-Aid, as Denny Hayes would say. You can't reform them, Mike. Leave them alone. But it's a kick in the face of the populace. I mean, I don't know. And you were kind of explaining that with the Montrose, right? I mean, that's...
Eric's really got the skinny on Montrose. Eric is the man on that.
Get him on. Let's stop teasing. The listeners have been teased enough. Without further
Eric,
ado,
are you I'm interested, Eric. Please, you're a top quality guy. Please use me if I
You better make it
Jim
good.
knows how to do some teasing too. So.
Wow.
Make it good, and feel free to exaggerate a little bit to make it more entertaining. Go ahead.
Right on. Well, thanks, Michael, for having me on the show, and Jamie, Rick, Tim, Chad. Hello, guys. Well, here's first of all, it was brought to my attention by Kerry Justice and Ben Horner and others that what was happening was the clerk's office was blocking the ballot initiative from being on the ballot. Well, immediately I know the county clerk, John Gleason, because I see him at all the MTA, Michigan Townships Association meetings that we have monthly in Genesee County. So because of that, I figured, well, this is just an opportunity for me to reach out to him and just inquire as to what happened here. Maybe I could get some insight to further help the ballot initiative along. Well, apparently from what he directly told me was that the ballot initiative was brought to his department late. And he, in his perspective, he says, whether it was 5 minutes late or 2 days late, it doesn't matter. He's not his department is not going to break the law as far as elections go. But he, on a personal note, he certainly is not objective at all to it, and quite the opposite. He is actually all for it, and he supports the movement and the cause to reform laws and marijuana policy. So, kudos to that for the fact that the gentleman is on our side as far as that goes. And
right.
in addition to that, it was a great opportunity for me to make an ally and a connection to the county, especially since the county clerk's department, as John put it, has an open door policy for any kind of request for information. He said, although Genesee County has their own FOIA policy, he has an open policy, and if anyone has any questions or wants any information, they're welcome to get it, and no FOIA is required. And I think that open door policy is really significant for us, because if there is any efforts in the future to do any future ballot initiatives, we'll have an open door with the county clerk's office to inquire as to any of the details that need to be done, so that we don't stumble on our own feet or trip up anymore on these ballot initiatives.
For clarification for everybody, the petitioners got the signatures into the city on time. The city did not get the information to the county clerk on time.
Correct.
They were 2 days late, they were 2 days late, as I understand.
Right, correct. And I was at the Montrose City Hall meeting tonight, where Mayor Faust explained that there was a delay, and that they basically voted tonight to give their approval on it to go through on whatever was blocking or whatever. They gave their approval on that by I think, vote of a resolution is what they did. I'm not exactly specifically on how they did that, but I know that they gave their stamp of approval on it to be done. Whether the county does it or not is not their responsibility. So it's the county level now, which would be John Gleason's office, the county clerk. But at this moment, I don't believe that the county clerk is going to reverse his position on it unless he is court ordered or to do so. And that may require a filing of a writ of mandamus, which I'm not very familiar with, and I'm sure Michael can explain that when I'm done talking. But then the fact is that it seems that no one was objective to it. It sounds like they got a little bit of poor advice from their counsel at that time, which delayed, I think, their process a little longer. And I'm not sure if municipal mistakes like that can be reversed based on the fact of a administrative error, so to speak, and maybe those kind of policies can be reversed, and then John Gleason's office, the county clerk, can then issue a reverse policy in that way, or it may have to occur through a court.
Well, that gives a couple different options to the Safer Michigan Coalition and to those petitioners that were working on that project. I know that there's an attorney that's already involved in this, and that a process is in place to try and get Gleason to make that reversal using some of the techniques that you've talked about, Eric. And I don't know anything more about it than that, but it certainly seems like it would be a lot of wasted effort if we wouldn't at least make the attempt to reverse. I know, Tim, you're probably the specialist with this.
Well, what I know about it, and I confirm and agree with everything Eric just said. I believe. Well, I'll name a name. Jeff Hank. Is interested in this, and I think that Mr. Gleason is being as real as he possibly can, and so I do believe that a lawsuit or whatever you want to call it is going to be filed, and so Montrose, we can't write Montrose off. I want to be very specific in that I spoke with the mayor, Mr. Phelps, on a number of occasions. Montrose and the city council and the mayor, these are not our enemies.
Right.
Not at all. They're right there. They're rock solid. Again, this is a small community. They don't have a lot of money. They're scared of litigation. They don't want to even go there. And, I suggested to the mayor that if worse comes to worse, the Safer Michigan Coalition is not going to sue them, okay, to put it on the ballot in February and have a special election, okay? We would be fine if worse comes to worse and it's not on the ballot in November, that it'll be on the ballot in the next regularly scheduled election, and it'll win, at that point. I mean, it's the same thing that's going on with Utica and East Lansing. East Lansing is another planet, too. I don't mean to get off topic, but that's another one. East Lansing, they're really mean players. I mean, you'd think they're just real liberal and ACLU folks and blah, 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 but they don't like ballot initiatives. And so they are waiting the full 45 days, which is tomorrow. We don't even know whether we got enough signatures in East Lansing. And they're not telling, and we don't know what's going to happen, what's going to pop out of this Jack in the Box. But we're probably going to.
Certainly does underscore your point, though, Tim, that a city like Montrose that is not confrontational like that has been cooperative, and Mayor Fouts has been very good to our community. He testified as representatives in favor of our House bills that are still stuck in the Senate. And to be honest with you, that's a refreshing look at a community that's actually embracing it. The city of Montrose has 2 or 3 distribution centers already, even though it's a tiny little burg, and that's a perfect example of how they can be into a community.
Montrose. The local leaders in Montrose are just they're as good as it gets. They are not perps. They are victims. Period. And there was that thing about that lawyer, this Otis Stout, that's his name. I think they got bad advice. They got confused, and so they were 2 days late. And now,
on that note, I have a question for Michael. On that note, Michael, is if a municipality receives bad advice from their council, is that somehow covered under law, or is that reversible in some way, or is that like accountable and reversible? You get what I'm saying, Mike?
I think we do. Michael's. We're going to toss that question over to Jeff Frazier, who's an attorney here as well. Go ahead, Jeff.
Yes, I think that what you have here is the will of people that was frustrated, and you've got the county clerk who is basically saying, look, I'm not sure what to do, and so why don't we get a judge to give us some guidance? I don't think that that's a bad way to look at that.
No, but I think what you're asking, Eric, is there a vehicle in law to allow an overriding election issue like that because of an administrative error? That's really what you're talking
Correct.
about.
Correct. That's what I'm asking. That's what I'm asking. Exactly.
Yeah, like you say, you mandamus public official to over the circuit.
Chad's saying petition for review, so it looks like there may be a couple of different avenues, and of course, Mr. Hank and Mr. Brewer and all of the different attorneys involved with Safer Michigan Coalition are up on that type of stuff, and I'm sure that all those options are something they'd be familiar with.
Got it.
Eric, that pretty much got it for you. Is that right, though?
Yeah, that's pretty much what I was kind of looking at, because I've, as a trustee myself, our attorney has given us advice, and he's always told us, look, if I give you poor advice, that's what I'm here for, because it falls back on me. And I just heard him say that in reference, but legally I don't know what that exactly means. And how it would correlate to this particular scenario in Montrose, but. It just seems like if they were under poor advisement of counsel, that the decision could easily be reversed by some vehicle, as you put it, Rick. To say, oh, there's been an administrative error. Oh, by the way, or here's a letter to the county clerk. This will allow him to change his position without legal blowback. Is what I'm getting at, basically.
Might take something a little bit heavier than just a letter from the city council, though. Yeah,
and that's kind of what I was thinking too, because it seems like the
court order
the county, right?
Yeah, the court order seems to be the consensus opinion here. That's really the most direct and probably the best way.
And it doesn't necessarily have to be contentious. Is my only point.
Right.
It seems declaratory.
Right, because it's not like there was any ill intention on this part here. It's just a simple lapse of time. Given time constraints, especially when a city municipality has to not only conduct open meetings at the regular scheduled meetings, but to have additional meetings is extra costly. Not only can you pull together a full quorum to make a vote or a decision. So there are some things that I remember one policy we had to reverse was a land bank policy, because it was an administrative issue where we didn't have enough time to make a decision. And so I just figured that was the vehicle, is what I was explaining.
Well, and of course, Tim is the expert on this, having sued all the way up to the Supreme Court of the state of Michigan over election law in that respect. And I know that you've seen a lot of elections, even ones that you weren't involved in. Are you familiar with a court order to get something like this reversed, Tim? Is that something that you've seen in all of your decades of watching politics in the state?
Well, yeah, we have, and again, I think. If what Eric said and what I've heard, about Mr. Gleason, I hope all we have to do is file a piece of paper, okay, and then Montrose will be on the ballot, because the essence here is the leaders of Montrose are our friends, okay? They got bad advice. They got, things happen, bad things happen to good people. The people in Montrose, the leaders, are not our enemies. They are on our side. And I think in this case, a writ of mandamus, filed. I think that based on past experiences, it's going to work. Okay. Now, taking Utica, all right, or East Lansing, that's not going to be a home run, okay? Because the people that running East Lansing and Utica, they don't like it at all, and they're going to do everything they can to foot drag and delay and pardon my French, but queer the deal, so to speak. They don't want this on the ballot. Now, I'm saying, Montrose, we have a chance here. East Lansing, I don't know what these people are going to come up with. Nobody knows, but we're going to know probably by the end of the day on Friday. But I'm saying, Montrose, I think we're going to be okay on this. That's my gut feeling.
In addition to what you're saying, Tim, and I agree with you 100% on that. Montrose is still Genesee County, and we've known now for the last 6 years of the Michigan Medical Marijuana Act that Genesee County is pretty relaxed and favorable toward the movement.
That's exactly right.
So
I'm going to tell you, David Layton. I'm going to name a name. David Layton is our friend. David Layton
Absolutely.
is the prosecutor. David Layton gets the picture. David Layton is king.
I really
and I don't mean that
David Layton for
disrespectfully.
the Attorney General.
He should have even been Attorney General, not Bill Schuette.
I totally agree with you on that one, Tim. I think David Layton would make a great Attorney General.
Who else?
He's a really common sense approach kind of guy.
Yeah, the other guy that would make a great Attorney General is John Targowski. And John Targowski is actually holding, and we're about to go to a next segment, and I certainly appreciate, Eric, you calling in live, remote from the Montrose thing, and Tim is in the middle of a move. He's relocating his home, so that's an expensive and time-consuming thing, too. So, gentlemen, thank you both for calling into Planet Green Trees tonight. I hate to cut our segment short. It's such great conversation, but we do have Targo holding.
It's always a pleasure,
guys,
Michael.
Thank you.
And Rick, thank you. Thank you for the honor of being on your show.
We love you.
It's always a pleasure.
All right. Take care. Bye-bye.
So Targo's got to move back to Michigan so he's eligible, right?
Well, this is what I was going to say. I want to be clear because I was making a joke before. We do have the esteemed barrister John Targowski, but also joining us is from, and this is a 10 seconds advertisement, Radoy Law. It's sponsoring David Radoy's appearance on Camorran Law, Planet Green Trees. I should mention that David was in the studio earlier, but for some reason found something more important to do and left, and I want to call back into the show. We took a vote. We're not letting it back on the air. Just kidding. Without further ado, David Radoy, colleague. Gentlemen, how are we?
What's up, everybody?
Hey, what's up? I'm not a resident of Michigan, I don't know anymore, so I don't know that I could qualify to be Attorney General, but it's nice to be thought of that way. But
well, we're gonna give Totten a couple of years at it, so you can finish that business in California and move on back, John.
Maybe we'll see. But how have you guys been?
Good. But more importantly, you filed. I don't want to mess it up by not elaborating about it. I know we talked about it on one of the shows a little while back when you were honoring us.
So yeah, let me tell you what's going on in West Michigan. There was an indictment unsealed. There was a felony complaint unsealed in October of 2013. They dismissed it to indict, and we're talking about 38 to 40 people. I represent one of them, the first defendant, Sean Taylor. It's not a RICO case. It is a conspiracy to traffic 100 or more plants. Most people are facing 5-year mandatory minimums. Some people have prior records that would make them eligible to face 10-year mandatory minimums. And there's no violence. There's no weapons. Their compliance with the Medical Marijuana Act is, debatable. Certainly, most of, what they're doing could be construed under the provisions of 4 and 8, but none of that really applies in federal court. But in the indictment, the U.S. attorney basically paints a picture of these people as really just using the MMA as a ruse. And what did happen was somebody that wasn't my client found or put marijuana in Ohio, and basically started an interstate investigation that landed, back in the Western District of Michigan. They finally got indicted sometime, I think, in the spring. I'm trying to remember, February or March. And since then, I basically moved out west, and I was reading up on some efforts out here in California in federal court to challenge the constitutionality of marijuana at Schedule I as applied to, the deprivation of liberty that comes with putting someone in prison for 5 or 10 years as a mandatory minimum. So what was successful, at least in California, a defendant was able to get a hearing where some of the issues would have been litigated as to whether or not they were going to put on evidence from Chris Conrad, from James Dolan, from one other physician about the efficacy of medical marijuana, and in essence, not asking the judge there to reschedule marijuana, but asking the judge to find that under the 14th Amendment and the 6th Amendment that there's no rational basis to treat marijuana like that. And I brought this argument because in the last 2 years, there's been 2 Supreme Court cases that have really updated the situation on the 14th Amendment. That was the DOMA case, the gay rights case, and there was a case where the Voting Rights Act was struck down, which was, I think, a year ago. Voting Rights Act was this thing where some states and not other states were required to have federal pre-clearance to change their election laws. And because in that case the voting laws were different in certain states and not others, that implicated equal protection issues. I tried to argue, and in California they're trying to argue the same thing for basically the Cole and Ogden memos of selective enforcement of marijuana, meaning that in Colorado there's literally no effort by the U.S. Attorney there to enforce federal law, even though it exists still. But in other states, like in Michigan and in California and in Florida, there's just different treatment depending on what state you're in. So in essence, the DOMA, which is the gay marriage case, basically also treated people differently based on what state they got married in and whether they could transfer. Like one state had to accept a gay marriage from another state. So all those issues are constitutional, they're implicated, and we're trying to apply them to the war on marijuana. And it was basically, we found out this week that Judge Yonker, federal judge in Grand Rapids, who was the judge that was behind who dismissed the wrongful termination lawsuit against Joe Casillas when he sued Walmart. But Judge Yonker issued an opinion denying our motion, denying our effort to even get a hearing to put on evidence of what we're trying to ask for. So that's essentially been what's going on. There's a lot of prominent good, Michigan lawyers on this case. Mary Chartier is on this case. Mike Nichols is on this case. Several other people that I'm thinking of that are good, and we're sort of starting to talk about whether or not we pursue an effort in the Sixth Circuit. I don't know if that's going to happen. That's the Sixth Circuit Court of Appeal in Cincinnati, and there's probably some issues in that sort of go beyond the scope of planting green trees. So yeah. I'll leave it to that. But in essence, we're at a point where, because of the complete ridiculousness of actually saying that marijuana has no medical value, we have a green light for the federal government to try to put 38 people in federal prison for a long time. So there's no trial date set. We have a right to be tried within 70 days of arraignment, excluding certain days for motions and stuff. So we should be having a trial date probably sometime in the next 2 to 3 months.
John, was there a written opinion of the denial of your motion?
Yes. Correct, yes.
How long was it?
15 pages.
And what was the basis of his equal protection denial? Why did he say that argument fails?
Well, and he basically said I'm sort of over-applying the cases from the Supreme Court that we talked about, that, for instance, federal law about the Controlled Substance Act is actually the same in Colorado as it is in Michigan and Florida and California, and it's the enforcement of that law that's different, and that's a critical difference that differentiates it from like the Voting Rights Act case where federal law was different based on what state you were in explicitly. The other thing that Yonker found was that that basically it's up to Congress to figure out whether marijuana has no medical value, and it's up to the DEA to sort of like implement that, and that it was sort of beyond the scope of what he was allowed to do as a district court judge, and that he didn't want to get into this, starting a patchwork of some places this is unconstitutional, some places it's not, depending on what circuit or district or even judge you're in front of. So he sort of found that to be problematic. But in essence, I mean, there's specific case law saying you cannot convict somebody of an unconstitutional statute. And so because marijuana obviously has medical value, because I can, have a laundry list of experts that are willing to come to court in Michigan and testify under oath subject to cross-examination by the Justice Department, because I can't do that now, I basically, we're left there. We're left with, going to trial or, working out some plea agreement. We don't know what we're doing yet. Probably trial, frankly, at this point. So,
John, you did say 30 attorneys on this. 30 different attorneys?
Yeah, so everybody in federal court gets their own attorney. You don't have the rights. Like the federal defender can't represent more than one person. So there's most of the people. Some people are retained. Daniel Groh, for instance, is retained on one of the clients, but most of them are appointed from what's called the CGA panel, which is a panel of mostly federal practitioners. I used to be on the CGA panel in the Western District. I'm currently on the CGA panel in the Central District of California. So basically it's staffed by panel attorneys that get paid an hourly rate from taxpayer dollars, probably, a lot more money than you'd imagine, actually, because there's hundreds and, I have cases with, on this case, I think there was probably about 1,000 documents. I didn't write, but another defendant wrote a wiretap motion, which was also denied. So the Fed spent an exhaustive amount of resources. This case demonstrates how the war on drugs has completely perverted the process, and how once the DEA and the FBI have expended all these resources and tried to forfeit these assets, there's every incentive to make sure there's convictions behind it, even when those convictions are frankly unconstitutional as applied in these cases. So it's just an example, like a window into really what your federal tax dollars are doing, because there's 38 lawyers that are getting paid a fairly good government rate.
And just to be clear, this is, for the listeners, this is about a bunch of caregivers. These guys weren't growing. I mean, it's not like we're talking about thousands of plants and moving. It's like one guy moved this stuff to Ohio, a little bit, not a huge amount, and that's what brought the federal government in. Yeah, not your client, but one of these people brought a little bit of weed to Ohio, and that's it. That's why there's federal stuff going on here. When we're talking about basically a bunch of caregivers, that maybe we're outside of Section 4. Too. Yeah. I mean, these aren't crime lords. It sounds like you hear 10-year mandatory minimums and stuff. I just think the audience should know that we're talking about, your average everyday caregivers. Nobody's making lots of money. Can I give you an example?
I can give you an example. I'm representing on the CHA panel in California a guy who's accused of an 11-pound meth deal with cartel meth. He's facing a 10-year mandatory minimum. So we're playing
low-level stuff, not getting the same type of mandatory minimums as they have in the past.
That's not applicable to mandatory minimums. What you're talking about is something called the Smart Sentencing Act that's going into or it's a United States Sentencing Commission interpretation of that act. God, I sound like a geek. Basically, you're going to have more drugs to get a specific offense level, which is a part of your federal sentencing guidelines. federal sentencing guidelines for drug cases, even like there may be a 60-month mandatory minimum or 120-month mandatory minimum, but your client may have sentencing guidelines that is a range in months that are either below or above that. And if your guidelines are above your mandatory minimum, might get more than your mandatory minimum. So what's coming in November is basically making it so that at a particular score you just need more drugs, whether it's marijuana or other things. At the higher levels, like 11 pounds of cartel meth, that there's really no benefit under what's coming. But, I mean, it is remarkable that I'm dealing with sort of the same type of, like, penalties, and we're just talking about two completely different worlds. The world that my client Sean Taylor is in, there's no guns, and this is Michigan, so people, like, love guns. I mean, California is like, there's no Second Amendment here comparatively on guns, and there's like no gun seized, nothing in the Michigan case. These are not like serious drug traffickers. You cannot be a serious drug trafficker and not be weaponized. Weapons are there to solve problems, where money gets shorted, where what have you. So I mean, you cannot just do this interstate, and creating conflicts. I mean, you can't really be an organization without the ability to enforce power and discipline and fear on behalf of people that go against your will. And none of that's true in this case. And all of that allegedly is true in some of the cases I'm working on here.
Allegedly.
Anyway,
I mean, the point is
so.
that Sean Taylor is being charged the same as your 11 pounds of meth guy. I mean, they're looking at the same mandatory minimum, and one is a real cartel person, and one's a marijuana caregiver that might have been outside his limits. I mean, it's just insane. It's insane, and now there's.
Take a step further. Chad was just showing me some carnage of some defendants in this 11 defendant case in Oakland County, which is very similar to the case John described. Not as many people, but as I described in the rant, it's a good medical cannabis network. There's a lot of resources and people and well-oiled, and it works well. And but unfortunately, it's being prosecuted in Oakland County. They're calling it a continuing criminal enterprise, and it is very penal. It takes a normal marijuana case that has, rational guidelines, and puts them up into mandatory minimums. I noticed that some of our colleagues or the defendants, co-defendants, have jumped off the ship, and maybe I don't know if I can say anything other than they'll probably be going to prison, state prison for this kind of stuff. And but it is well beyond. I mean, John, I was going to ask you this: is there maybe you already answered, but I know that the federal sentencing guidelines, of course, or the sentencing procedure allows for, if it's not mandatory, if it's not a mandatory minimum, it requires the court to
so
do
there's two ways. There's sort of two ways to get out of a mandatory minimum. One is if you're what you're called safety valve eligible, which my client is not, and typically you have to be like certain people in the Ryan Bazor cases were and were not safety valve eligible. You have to have almost no criminal history and not have any violence, not be a leader. My client's accused of being a leader. Another way to get out of a mandatory minimum is to be is to what's called substantially assist the government in targeting and investigating other suspects, basically snitching. So I'm imagining that out of the 38 or I always forget 38 or 40 people in this case, that there might be people willing to cooperate and testify to get themselves out of the boot on the neck that is the mandatory minimum. Certain things in the federal sentencing guidelines are advisory and not mandatory. Like you can get out of a sentencing guideline, assuming no mandatory minimum, much easier in federal court than in state court in terms of getting a variance and justifying it and all sorts of stuff. And like I've had heroin traffickers. I had a heroin trafficker in Michigan get 200 months, and his guidelines were way above that. So,
I was going to say this. My question was going to be that, the policy changes, as I've observed them, and a couple of cases, was that the Attorney General originally indicated that he was going to instruct the assistants to use their discretion in charging. They don't have to charge mandatory minimums. They can if they want. And those are the things that always, compel the judges to, give prison sentences, even though very few judges like being compelled to do anything. I think if you ask, they may still get that kind of sentence, but they don't like the idea that these guidelines are compelling them. And really, theoretically, each case should be looked at individually. Has always been the argument. Why do you need a judge if there's a mandatory minimum? Why can't I, use my best discretion? Anyways, the point is that.
Well, Michael, then what happened is crack and the war on drugs happened, and basically Congress got tough on crime, and
we are moving the pendulum back in the other direction. The executive branch has been very clear on wanting and recognizing the problem of the overcrowding of jails with nonviolent drug offenders, and this is what I wanted to get to. The Sentencing Commission that makes recommendations and letters to the the committee for the Sentencing Commission or what have you has over and over again the last 6 months when they do reports provided recommendations for changing some of those guidelines or creating policies to not have so many prisoners for nonviolent crimes. And those things are, you can argue those things at sentencing if you're in a issue where the court has discretion. And I kind of see that as like a little baby step a little bit, because if you have no mandatory minimums, they're not charging mandatory minimums, and of course there's going to be guidelines, but the court in federal court does not have to follow the guidelines. It's completely discretionary.
Well, I think, Michael, what I haven't seen it personally in any of my cases yet, but I've seen a couple times where federal judges have basically done they're on their own motion, like a variance to go beneath guidelines where they're still above amendment, on the basis that federal marijuana law, they say explicitly, federal marijuana law is just not that, grave to violate anymore because it's legal in these states and it's an ongoing, nothing that these people are doing in the Western District of Michigan is anything in comparison to even, the smallest marijuana, recreational marijuana grow or operation in Colorado, or at least some, very modest sized one. So it's just a tremendous and frustrating thing to have to see sort of up close.
Well,
so I think more people should see it up close.
In your case out west, are they? He's got high guidelines, obviously, and probably looking at a lot of time. Is there any? Other than the things we talked about, is there any acknowledgement that there's some medical marijuana going on, or they just see it as an abuse? What's their justification for even prosecuting? I know you can't. You maybe speculate a little bit, but do you have a?
Well, I don't have a medical marijuana case in federal court in California at all. They really there's very little enforcement of that. The cases I have out here are involving money laundering and, it goes off. If you want to look at my Facebook.
10 pounds of meth.
I have 4 cases in the LA Times, and they're all state-appointed cases. I'm not I'm not getting paid millions of dollars to do this. Or they're all federal-appointed cases. But it's categorically different out here, as to what you can really do and even be a target of a federal investigation. Like, nobody really cares about. There is some, every once in a while, there's some, enforcement of federal law on marijuana stores, on dispensaries, but it's not. I'm not an expert on that out here, but it's not really that common. So to subject Sean Taylor and his wife and several people that are like the parents of people with cards that helped, in very minimal ways with cultivation, at least according to the indictment. So it's just really, it's just a sad waste of what we're doing. I think more people in Michigan should see it. We're going to have a trial of some kind, and it's going to be in Grand Rapids. And I hopefully will stay involved with you guys, and you guys can help forward.
You got to keep us updated on what's going on. The listeners are definitely going to want to follow this case, John, and I certainly hope you'll be able to keep us updated regularly. It's fascinating. It's horrifying, but it's fascinating as well.
No, yeah.
And I say, why not appeal? Why not appeal that ruling? I think that equal protection claim is pretty genius. And I mean, it's clear that marijuana users are being treated differently and equal protection refers to enforcement as well, doesn't it?
Well, not according to Judge Yonker, and not because the case law. I mean, I think that the impact either way of the enforcement the enforcement of federal marijuana laws in Colorado is non-existent. So, it's functionally legal under federal law because there's no enforcement. Prices are going down. People can grow 6 plants under state law legally for no reason. So, I mean, there's a lot of inventory. So,
by the way, Kendrick is going U.S. Supreme Court.
You mean Michigan Supreme Court?
No. I was denied leave by Michigan Supreme Court.
Okay.
I'm going the rest of the way up the chain.
And
Jay,
David,
what's the name of the case again?
That was a fun case. Tell them about that. That was some.
Basically, Court of Appeals case. Me and John won the case in the trial court about whether a cop can walk past no trespassing signs into your backyard, just walk up to your back door because somebody's car was parked off the road with their hazard lights on in the wintertime, and because there were footprints going to the backyard. The Court of Appeals reversed us and said, yeah, a cop can go in your backyard. And Court of Appeals judges were basically telling me, like, I'd want the cop to walk into my backyard. And I'm like, who fucking cares about your what you would want in your backyard? This is about the Fourth Amendment protections that are afforded to us. And the rule of law is that they should go to the front door. If anywhere, like where public thoroughfare is available is to the front door. Nobody wants the public just walking into their backyard besides the Court of Appeals of Michigan. And the Supreme Court denied leave. And I think it's a case that builds right off of Jardines. I think there's a chance the U.S. Supreme Court will hear it.
Yeah, the U.S. Supreme Court ruled on this issue like 2 years ago in a case out of Florida, and it's a Justice Scalia case, and he really is not the friend of progressive. I don't know. I actually don't know what he does on marijuana, but in effect, he really holds up the Fourth Amendment, in that one case. And I wish you the best of luck, David. That sounds like you got a pretty fertile issue. So let me know if you know.
Hopefully I get to be one of those 80 cases heard by the Supreme Court a year, but it's a long shot. But I think it's worth going for. I mean, I think that it's a ruling in Michigan that goes against Jardines. And maybe they'll want to correct it, So
I think the proper procedure might be go to the Sixth Circuit first. I'm not sure, because they might be able to basically, figure out that Jardines is on point and just order. I don't know. We can talk about it off show, but
yeah, we
John,
can talk about
was an appeal under consideration for your case? I'm not sure if you ever fully answered that.
We're talking about it with several other lawyers. Just sort of the pros and cons of it, and there's a couple of issues with, if we actually do get the hearing, and whether
can you supplement your pleadings as a way to do like a motion to reconsider or something like that after seeing what was?
You can do a motion to reconsider, but then what you can also do is an interlocutory appeal to the Sixth Circuit Court of Appeals in Cincinnati. Federal system has circuit courts. They cover several states. Michigan is in the Sixth Circuit. California's in the Ninth Circuit, and so that would be the procedural next step. There's something called an interlocutory appeal, which is like pre-conviction. You're appealing a ruling, but an interlocutory appeal in general has to be something that's sort of an extraordinary thing. And a lot of courts will be like, we'll handle this, if at all, upon conviction of your client. So and in the federal system, to be honest, of criminal defendants, not just marijuana or drug cases, 95% of all people that are criminal defendants will at some point attend a sentence hearing, meaning they pled guilty to something or they're found guilty of something. So the odds are really stacked against you for anything, which is why it's important to talk about. So
any other shameless Motions you want to do, David Roy? Give a shout out to something or something else going on. David Roy Law.
Any other
motions
I should talk about?
Well, I know you're going out of town tomorrow. You're bailing out in case in the afternoon. You're probably going to miss your flight. Is that what we decided earlier? Just kidding.
Yeah, I'm going to miss the flight, but
we're not. It's going to be fine. We have like one of those cases kind of going tomorrow. David, myself, and Brother Neil's a good.
David, tell the Planet Green Cheese listening audience where you should be this weekend.
I should be at the DUI/drug lawyer seminar in Vegas, but.
So, Michael, just for your listeners, this is not like a joke. They have a conference in Las Vegas every year for basically lawyers that defend drug traffickers. David and I went in 2013. Daniel Gross there right now. I'm going to see him in a couple days. I have some work this week, so it's it is what it is. But I invite you to come next year.
But instead, me and Mike are going to hang out and do a preliminary exam with Neil Rockhind. And it's a case where we just keep showing up, and the prosecutor doesn't know what she's doing really and doesn't know how to get the evidence in. And Neil and Mike are objecting to evidence, and then she's asking for adjournments. And it's our third day of the preliminary exam over a 2-month span. Longer than 2 months, I think, at this point. And who knows how long it will take tomorrow. So should be fun, though. Mike, and Neil have fun in court.
It's fun beating up on the prosecutor sometimes, just when you know the rules of evidence really well and they don't. and there's, I think, David, you would agree with me that when we had that in our 141 plant case in Jackson, that we were talking about, the search issue, like that prosecutor was not, she didn't know what she was talking about.
Correct. So, yeah. It's going to be fun. It was great being on the show, guys. Cool
great
to
show,
hear
guys.
about. Yeah. Cool to hear about John's case, and I wish that issue would start gaining speed. I think it's worth appealing. I think it's bullshit.
David, just so everybody knows, David actually also has had an attorney-client relationship with Sean, helped him out on some other stuff, and helped me out a little bit with meeting with him and talking about him. So thanks a lot for helping me out with that, David. He was underpaid for that. So I appreciate all that. And I'll definitely be calling you. Yeah. Fighting the war on drugs sometimes is actually, for us lawyers, pretty fun. I kind of get excited about it. It's sort of like, I don't know, cross-examining the DEA is going to be really, really fun. I can't wait to do it. So, anyways, good night, guys.
John, thanks so much for calling in from California. We really appreciate that.
Oh, I love you guys, man. You guys are definitely... I always love keeping up with you guys on Facebook, so 100%. Thanks.
Thank you. And, David, we never really voted not to let you talk. He was just teasing you. You know that, right?
Oh, yeah, I know. I deserve some shit for leaving and then calling in, so I just I took it gracefully and decided not to comment on it. But I wish I was there with you guys, but I had to pack a little bit. And get ready for this all-day exam that me and Mike are going to kill it on tomorrow. So
we are going to kill it. We're going to kill it.
We'll be killed. For all of us here at News 74, I'm Ron Burgundy. You stay classy, San Diego.
So we're wrapping it up. We're in the overtime, by the way, so we can play. There's all the.
Is John Roberts on the line?
R-rated. Yeah, let's go.
Yeah. No, he's supposed to call in. I know, Chad, you arrived a little bit late, but John's got some good news about the St. Clair County Sheriff's Department and also an event that's going to benefit the Cannabis Cancer Project he wanted to tell our listeners about. So if he's on the line on a 989 number...
Don't forget to bring a towel.
I love the towel.
When you get out of the water, you need to dry off right away to avoid catching a cold. That's why Tally says, don't forget to bring a towel.
Okay. Thanks, Tally.
You want to get high?
No.
All right, it's John Roberts on. Someone from the Cannabis Cancer Project. I'm waiting all night to talk to you.
John?
Come on.
Paul, you on there? Well, I'll tell you what, we can certainly... It's just after 10. Are they still going to be online?
Someone check his signal.
It's a 989 number.
That's him for sure. That's him right there.
Chad's pointing.
All right.
John Roberts. Cannabis Cancer Project. Terrible scenario. Well, I'll tell you what. While we're
Who was he
waiting,
meeting with? Was he meeting with Federspiel? Are we going full circle on this?
Hey, by the way, the MRAP that was given back by Federspiel is headed to Lapeer County, from what I understand. Did you see that? I think there was an
Gary
article.
Parks is like, yeah, bring that.
Gary Parks is like, I need that to bust Jamie Fricke's door down in Lapeer. Right. Oh my goodness gracious. The event that they're talking about from the Michigan Cannabis Cancer Project, I'm trying to find the information on that right now so I can share that with you, even though we don't have John on the line.
Someone should poke him on Google Plus.
Poke him on Google Plus. Wow, that's an obscure social media reference, but it might work actually. By George, you may have found it. I'm actually using Facebook to look at the event, and just as a clue to all of those people that are planning things out there, Facebook events get you noticed. Here it is, Cancer Patients' Right to Choose, which is September 13th and 14th this weekend from noon on Saturday to 6 p.m. on Sunday, the 14th. And it is at 3127 North River Road, Fort Gratiot, Michigan, which is over by Port Huron. And it says behind and in the back of that address. This event will be held along the river. Plenty of parking and camping will be available with live music, guest speakers, bonfire, and I was told there are vendors too. So that's the details on this weekend's event for the Cannabis Cancer Project called Cancer Patients' Right to Choose. Certainly trying to support those guys.
I have a quiz for anyone that might know the answer. This is a Michigan cannabis historical question. Name the person who sent me this note. He said, thank you, Patriot. Keep planting those rainbows. Who is it? Come on. You guys would know.
Keep planting those rainbows? Is that Canaanite? Or who is that?
I don't know.
Who the hell said that?
Tim Rice. Remember Tim Rice?
Oh, TJ. Yeah, Tim.
You know, he was a.
Oh, I totally understand that now.
He's a Rainbow Farms. You know,
yep.
It's like a.
It was raining from.
That's a good quiz. Someone's got a creative, fun game toy that I just did with something. We're working on new things. Talk about those ideas for the show and the wrap up. What do we come up with?
Well, we're ready for the news whenever you want to go.
I'm sorry.
That's cool.
Let's hold on. Let me.
We're all good.
Do this how it should be. I don't have that other.
Everybody panic! Oh my God, there's a bear loose in the Coliseum! There will be no refund! Your refund will be escaping this death trap with your life! You have a small child, use it as a shield! They love the tender meat! Cover your sodas! Do we love sugar?
We love sugar.
Ladies and gentlemen, can I please have your attention? I've just been handed an urgent and horrifying news story. And I need all of you to stop what you're doing and listen.
And when I say horrifying.
Oh, my goodness.
Rick Thompson with the news.
Thank you very much, Michael. Ladies and gentlemen, this is the news. It's September 11th, 2014. I'm Rick Thompson. We've heard a lot about the advancement of our package of bills here in the Michigan Senate this month. It's been the talk of a lot of different Michigan media subjects. Kathleen Gray of the Detroit Free Press Lansing Bureau wrote, quote, 2 bills that would allow communities to decide whether they want medical marijuana dispensaries as well as permission to sell medical marijuana-infused products, such as brownies and oils, have been stalled in the state Senate all year, but both are now expected to get a vote sometime this month. It's anticipated that both of those bills will be passed out of the Senate this month, but Michigan Governor Rick Snyder was recently featured in an MIRS News Service article saying that marijuana issues were not in his sights for the near future. stating he'd rather work on more pressing topics. He included marijuana as one of the issues he'll deal with when legislation hits his desk. Snyder also made a claim that seems rather fatally flawed regarding marijuana and states' rights to Michigan radio. He said, quote, the Michigan radio article said, later in the program, the governor dismissed the idea of legalizing marijuana in Michigan. He says it's not up to the state to decide whether marijuana should be legal or illegal. Quote, it doesn't make it legal. It's against federal law, end quote, Snyder said. Snyder's opinion is contradictory to the position of the federal government, who's refused to block legalization programs that are in full swing in Colorado and Washington. States of Alaska, Oregon, and the District of Columbia are all voting on full legalization measures during the November election. In Colorado, a state with a long-standing medical marijuana program, statistics indicate adult use or recreational marijuana sales have now eclipsed sales to registered marijuana patients for the very first time. Time magazine reports that during the month of July, the state received $838,000 from a 2.9% tax on medical marijuana, meaning that patients spent about $28.9 million in those dispensaries. The state, meanwhile, raised $2.97 million from a 10% sales tax on retail marijuana, putting those sales at about $29.7 million, according to calculations by the Cannabis. I'd just like to go over those numbers real quickly for any legislators that might be listening. In 1 month, the state received $838,000 from medical and $2.97 million from recreational in 1 month. Pot for potholes, baby. Pot for potholes. The Toledo Hemp Center and our buddy Kevin Spittler, he's hosting a free community cookout to help raise awareness of the Toledo area's growing population. Jamie, I think we have lost the power on my computer and all of our news. So you know what? We're going to do this. We're going to take a hiatus on the news right now, and I think we have celebrity Dr. Robert Townsend on the line waiting to talk to us. I think you'd like to raise a couple of issues. Michael, is that correct? Even though we had to abort the news because of that?
Let me check with the time. We got 3 minutes. If we can get it in 3 minutes and everyone commits to less than 3 minutes, we can do it. All right, we're on.
Dr. Bob, you're on the air. Thanks for calling in.
Oh, you put me on the air? I was just listening for tonight. I didn't have anything to add.
All right, good stuff. I thought I wasn't sure. I thought I got maybe there's a mixed message. Communication is so difficult sometimes on the internet, isn't it? So, when we're in the after hour, also we can actually, this is not what do we call this? The red light district? Is that what we're in? No, I'm.
It should be if it's not.
Talking about something else.
That's a great name.
Anyways,
we're like the speakeasy time. We're the after hours program now, right?
We're taking the show to the next level. How
are things at Denali there? How are things at Denali Healthcare, Dr. Townsend?
Oh, we're pretty busy doing mostly pain management right now and Suboxone therapy, a little bit of medical marijuana, but other than that, things are going pretty good. Getting good acceptance. Had a case dismissed in Muskegon last week. It's working out pretty well.
That's good stuff. Are you finding that, like you said, you do a lot of Suboxone, which means that in pain management, in some marijuana, does that mean like is the like if you go to a neutral and objective patient pool, which I don't even think is really a fair starting point, where is the public going for the treatment of pain? I mean, overall, I mean obviously they're still in the opiate seeking market, right?
Well, the biggest thing that we're seeing right now in the big news, as far as I'm concerned, is they just recently published a study in JAMA that showed the medical marijuana states were enjoying a 25% reduction in narcotic overdoses. And this is something that we've been doing right along for the last 3-4 years. Marijuana is an excellent substitute for narcotic pain control, and we're finding that we can generally reduce narcotic use by 50 to 75% simply by combining cannabis with it. That's a message that we've been preaching to local primary care doctors, pain management facilities. So, I mean, it's pretty much turning out the way we thought it would.
I was going to tell you, I talked about this a little bit earlier with our first guest from ASA, because these are the things that are coming up in the political discussions. You jumped right on it too. That has been the big news, and the story reads, the headlines read a certain way, and we actually had one of the participating. I tell the same story again, is that okay? Because mine, the participating contributor to the story, the commenter, she was on the air. It's federally funded. It's a federally funded program. I said,
it was Dr. Marie Hayes, and she co-authored the analysis of the study.
So, I was kind of acting sarcastic in my own mind. I had this other character that I'm working on, Sarcastic Mike. You know what? You don't want to meet me. Just kidding. But I was asking the question, the way the headline reads, it's like, okay, where the states are that medical marijuana exists, clearly, these persons that are taking opiates are now taking, instead of opiates, cannabis, and 25% are dying less. That's what and I kind of presented it to her like, of course that's what it is. What else could it be? Because the study really is not conclusive in any one regard. But then she says, this is what we found fascinating. What the conclusions really are is as follows. In those states where people are dying for the using of opiates, it's either overdosing or mixing them with other drugs, cocktail party, partying or whatever, I don't want to say partying, but, just using, overdosing and mixing and what have you. But in the states where there's medical marijuana, people were mixing it with marijuana, which was a healthier choice. And 25% were dying. Am I right about that? Did I say
yes.
that?
Yeah, that's correct. And, the worst combination appears to be narcotics and benzodiazepines like Valium and Xanax. The problem you run into when you mix those two is you quit breathing. Whereas if you mix opiates with marijuana, you go to sleep.
Those are very common. Those are very common that you could find in a medicine cabinet of a number of. I mean, I wonder how many people are on. What did you say, Xanax?
Xanax, yeah.
And what was the other one?
Valium. Ativan is another one that we see.
It's gotta be one of the more
I'm sorry. I changed over my phone, so it's a little clearer now.
That's one of those. I think it's fair to say I'm not taking away or retracting from it, but I think that is a drug that was sold on the principle and concept of feeling better. You know what I mean? Like by taking a drug. You know what I mean? The idea of getting high or altering your consciousness. And it was sold as a, I think it's the marketing. I think that is I'm not saying it's good or bad. I'm just saying I'm identifying like a bottle of Coke. Like no one would ever think that they would want or drink a bottle of Coke until you saw it, what do I look at the,
just to provide that number, doctors write nearly 50 million prescriptions for Xanax or alprazolam, the cheap generic equivalent, every year. And that was from 2010. That number's got to be much higher now. 50 million prescriptions a year in the United States alone.
Well, if you ever do the math on it, you figure that a lot of doctors are writing 4 Vicodin a day for their chronic pain patients. The average doctor that sees 20 patients a day, 4 of those patients, 1 in 5, is a chronic pain patient. The bottom line is, if you look at a standard general practice primary care doctor that doesn't deal primarily with pain, they're writing about 10,000 doses of Vicodin equivalents per month per doctor, and there are 30,000 primary care doctors in the state of Michigan alone. The numbers are staggering.
Let's play a game.
Staggering.
Let's play a game. Let's play Ask the Doctor questions, okay? I'm curious to know is there an incentive? Because I've heard of this. My father's a physician, but he wasn't a pain management. But is there doctors make money in some capacity for writing scripts? Explain how that works.
Oh, they don't. They don't. No, it used to be the drug companies could take you down to the Bahamas for a week, to give you a one-evening seminar.
that has been changing since the 70s to the point that, I had drug rep friends in the Carolinas that I used to go deer hunting with. I had to actually pay for my own membership to the deer club to go out hunting with them because, you can't bring your wife with you if you're unless she is a healthcare professional or in some capacity in your office. My wife's a nurse and was my office manager. It's the only way I could bring my wife to these dinners that they gave, and that's just for dinner. It seems like a lot of people seem to think that because a drug rep will pay for a round of golf with a doctor, that doctor will write bad medicines for their patients. That really isn't the case. It's just a common myth. We don't get anything one way or the other. It doesn't matter what drug we do.
I don't mean getting paid to do it. I'm saying when you write the script and you bill it through Blue Cross or however you do it,
we just get paid for the office visit. We don't get paid for the medicine. We just get paid for the office visit. The only time we'd ever get paid for the medicine is if we happen to dispense it ourselves. And there are very, very, very few physician offices that dispense any medicines at all.
Do some of the PPOs or group organize, where you're rationing or you've got X amount of budgetary resources and it's kind of a minimalist healthcare?
Well,
but do they have
What they generally do is they'll put a formulary of drugs out that you're allowed to write. And if you don't write something that's on the formulary, you have to request special permission to write that. For example, if I have a patient, that I want to give Nexium to, the drug company will tell me that if I'm not going to tell them to buy over-the-counter Prilosec, which is very, very similar, I have to submit a written appeal to get that drug covered. And what they do is they take our time. But if we don't write the medicines they want us to write, that's the main thing. I have to get prior authorizations for Suboxone, for example.
Guys, I don't mean to. I'm really curious. I don't say this with any kind of. I'm just really curious to know how the business of this side goes down. There's obviously some. First of all, there's a great demand for opiates. There are, in various states, different levels of regulations. Florida, for example, I think is the least regulated. Got a ton of, elderly in the community, and for some they serve vital, but it's also a huge place of abuse. People aren't doing it just to. Is it only in the illegal market, or are the doctors actually? What's their incentive to participate in that? And if you repeat. Oversight of a patient's file, you're just getting paid for the office visit, but nothing from the actual providing for or writing of the script.
No, absolutely not. No, we just bill for the office. We bill for the office
not
visit.
You. Not you. I'm saying, can somebody? Do other doctors? I'm not suggesting you. Is that?
Oh no. I understand what you're saying, Mike. What I'm telling you is the doctors are not paid in any way, shape, or form for writing a prescription. None of them are. Nobody is.
All right, so how do they get paid for the office visit?
They get paid just for the office visit. They have a certain level that they charge for each office visit. Has to do with the number of problems the patients have, et cetera. The only thing that I could say about doctors that write narcotic prescriptions versus doctors that don't, if a doctor is known as having a rather loose pen, they may have more office visits because more people want to come there that want those drugs. I'm pretty tight, but my niche in particular, even though I'm pretty tight on narcotics, I'm one of the few pain doctors in the area that will actually accept pain patients that have medical marijuana cards. A lot of other doctors, what it does is it cuts down the options that the patient has. They have to come to me or else they don't get anything from the other doctors. So that's just one little niche that I happen to be in, and I've been quite successful with it. We work with marijuana as part of our pain management program. It's no longer actually an independent part of my practice. It's a sub-pain management for the most part. Now, we do have patients that, suffer from cancer or Crohn's disease. We don't treat their nausea, for example, and we'll people, but the pain patients that
Unfortunately, Dr. Townsend, we're having some audio difficulties. I apologize.
I want to ask him
for
another
that.
question. Make him come back. I have one more question. Seriously.
I will snap my fingers and make it happen. Apparently, I am not Genie.
Where's John Roberts? I mean, come on. We hear about.
I mean, we got some powerhouse here in the studio, but wow, I'd like to get that update from John on the St. Clair County Sheriff's Office. That'd be great. I'd like to finish hearing about.
Is it St. Clair County or Saginaw?
No, St. Clair, which is over by his area there. He's in
not
Tuscola.
talk to any police.
I believe what's going on is that in Fort Gratiot, the city of Fort Gratiot, they're having that event this weekend, and perhaps he's discussed that with the sheriff's department and had something positive as an interaction. I'm not sure.
I don't know about that. They got a. I think they got this pattern, which is they come by the first time and they smile.
Uh-huh.
And they come back the next time and they are not smiling.
Mm-hmm.
And they treat you badly.
Yeah, and maybe they hassled a couple of your attendees after they left to go to the convenience store to grab a couple of waters, you know. They sometimes do that too.
I said, we feel like we could poke them on Google Plus. What happened?
And Dr. Townsend, again, very sorry for whatever audio difficulties we're experiencing. For those listeners that aren't familiar, Dr. Townsend is calling from a much distant portion of the state from where we're broadcasting from, so it's totally possible that there were some telecommunication issues there. But again, I want to finish up with the one thing that, from the news. We can discard the news, but this thing about the Toledo Hemp Center, I want to just go over this real quickly, okay? They're going to give away 200 hot dogs and hamburgers are going to be served to the kids from the 5 Points Association area of Toledo, and the free giveaway is developed by our friend, Toledo native and Toledo Hemp Center CEO Kevin Spittler. And, of course, Mr. Spittler's made a long career out of helping others, too, here in Michigan.
We'll have to get him back on soon.
Absolutely, and that's going to be for specifically for the people in that particular community, and that's this weekend. It's on Sunday. It's in Toledo, Ohio. There's details in regards to that on Facebook, but just to call attention to a great guy doing a great thing, even if it wasn't his hometown, we can do that in our individual communities as well. So, Mr. Roberts, Mr. Townsend.
I'm
sorry
poking him. He's not.
Well,
he's kind of.
When you're on radio and you say that, it's
poking the wrong guy.
That's going to be a soundbite we'll have to take out.
I cannot hear. I cannot hear me. He says. I don't know. Maybe because we're after. I don't know. Let me try to go through a research.
I cannot hear me.
Oh, you know, let's.
Jeff, that's a musical number for you right there.
I know everybody here has been asking me repeatedly, and I'll just offer up that my surgery went well.
Actually, you said that earlier.
Last week. Yeah.
By the way, he told me he was talking with the Delta College in Federspiel.
Federspiel?
It wasn't, I don't think it was St. Clair County. That would be...
I certainly got the information third hand myself, so...
I was going to be really surprised. I said, that sounds like a trap.
Yes, because St. Clair County is noted as a thumb area county that's very harsh.
Let's wrap it. Come on, let's close. I can't take it. I got to get up early. I got so much work. Can't take it. What do we got? We've got some songs to go down. Any other final...